Good morning. It's roughly 5:30 maybe, and I am getting out here to do foliar feed. Trying to be a little earlier this morning before the sun's up, and you can see I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna get over to the garden real quick. This is the view of our garden from our porch. Not much fog this morning, a little bit, but not as much as normal. Welcome to our channel. It's Erica from Flicker Hill Homestead. We are in north central Massachusetts, Zone 5B, and we are in the end of July at this point. And I'm going to be going over our raised bed, our Birdies raised bed, I should say, garden tour today. As well as I have a video on our fall mums coming, progress update. Probably would have been released right before this video, maybe right after. And I'm going to do a foliar feed this morning as well on a bunch of the items. And I'm also getting ready to pull the rest of our onions, which is pretty exciting. I shouldn't say the rest, a large majority of our onions. We're going to talk about what I've already seeded for the fall and what I'm planning on seeding and some considerations I've been taking into my planning. All right, it's close to 6:30, 6:45 now. I've done the foliar feed and really focused on the lisianthus and most of the cut flowers versus the veggies at this point. Most of the veggies are actually doing okay. Just need some tomatoes to actually ripen. So I believe there's 22, maybe 23 Birdies beds total that we ordered. Some of them we did combine, as you'll see. And if you've been following along, you probably have heard me say a couple of these things before. And I will try to add some updates and notes of some of the things I'm doing. So here in north central Mass and most of New England, we've had one of the rainiest summers I can remember. I know 2 years ago it was rainy, last year it was drought. And but this year it was really, really dry in May, and then June and July we have had a ridiculous amount of rain, and I know a lot of farms have been affected. So if you're able to, there's a Vermont Farm Fund. I think there's going to probably be some Massachusetts ones as well, New York ones as well. So please, in Connecticut, please be on the lookout for helping out those local farmers. You can also support them by just going and purchasing what they have available. Check out the local farmers markets. But this is going to be a really rough year for a lot of local farmers. We are a very small scale here, and I'm more of like right on the edge of a backyard gardener. I would not sure I'd fully consider us a farm yet, but we do a lot of raised beds, and so during rainy years like this year, we're able to control the water a lot more than big fields. I do quite a bit of growing and companion planting and vertical growing, as you can see here, and so that does allow me to grow a lot in a very little space. Or not, I shouldn't say very little, because a lot of people don't have this much space, but for us versus a traditional farming, this might be 4 times as big of a space needed than what I'm doing here. So with that, definitely a pro during rainy seasons to have the gardens elevated. All right, so this bed is 4 of the 8-in-1 Birdies beds put together. And so it's roughly 27 feet long, and it is, I believe, 3.5 feet wide. We have trellis set up for lower and lean. So we bought, this is actually, I think we ended up buying cedar for these posts instead of milling it ourselves. And then I've got bird houses on each post. The house wrens have moved from this one, and they actually just hatched their second litter nest on the other end. You'll probably see some of the wrens coming in and feeding. This year we did make some improvements to the trellis. These posts are concreted in, but they were still bowing in with the weight of the tomatoes, because there's 25 tomatoes on each side, 50 total, and actually there's more because I let a couple volunteers grow. So Jace rigged this up so that there's a big metal post that runs between the two posts on the end, or pole between the two posts. And so that has helped with the structure quite a bit, and makes it so that these are not moving like they did last year. He also moved the T-post center supports. There was only one center support last year, and so now we split the bed into 3 sections, and that has helped quite a bit. And then he did fix the cable, I think, as well, on the connection over there. We have irrigation on this bed, so our water system still needs some improvement, but it's getting there. Back here, Jace just updated this for the mums. Back here we've got the splitter, and so as I go and I turn that one off, now I've got the 3 lines of irrigation going down this bed. Ideally, I think I would have 4 maybe, but 3 seems actually working fine, especially in a rainy season. So these have valve turnoffs on each of the top of the 3 lines, and I've kind of split between the tomatoes and the bed wall. And then I have onions over here on this side. On the other side I've got celery. I've got basil around the beds, and I'll continue to plant in, there's parsley, there's a few other things. And then you'll notice the zinnias are actually in the middle. Last year we did onions in the middle, but they got shaded out a little bit. So I wanted to try doing zinnias instead and try to invite the pollinators in. The first year we had the low beds, we actually did do zinnias in the middle of the tomatoes, and the pollinators were so happy. I also do alyssum on the underneath of the tomatoes, and this is a great companion plant. I have to be a little careful with it because it does self-seed here in Zone 5B, some years worse than others. And you can see I've got a volunteer cherry of some sort, maybe a cross between the Torahina cherry. It's pretty big, but I kind of let that go. I need to put that up though, so we will add a string up here for that. I've got a last year onion I was letting flower here, and the bees have been all over that midday. We are finally getting some ripe tomatoes to start here. This is the closest one. One of the things I did do on Saturday, I think it was Saturday morning or Friday early morning, last week I went and pruned these really heavily because we were finally going to have a few really sunny days. And since it's been raining so much, these tomatoes haven't been ripening. So I did my normal pruning, which is prune to the top fruit set when you do lower and lean, and that by doing it early that morning and prioritizing that, it actually did help some of the color get going finally. On this next row, we've got 4 low 8 and 1s individual. So you can see the difference between the 4 of them put together here, and then where there's almost a whole extra bed length when you add the walkways. This one is all flowers. I think there might be a couple onions in here, as I do end up putting onions in a lot of places, but I've got some of the Lisianthus, Cosmos, a couple different colors, marigolds. I had a bunch of stock in here, but I've pulled most of that for cuts. Celosia, basil, status here, snapdragons, some straw flowers, more celosia, alyssum. I'm sure there's other things in here. I definitely have this a little overstuffed at the moment. The next bed I have the giant marigolds with onions all around. These snapdragons will actually get pulled pretty quick here, and I'm going to take over this end of the growing space, and these stalk are pretty much getting towards the end of where they'll actually have any decent flowers. Between the rain and the weather and the really late frosts and being late on a lot of things, I did not have my best stock year, which was unfortunate because it is one of my favorites. You can imagine if that was, 5 times bigger, it'd be absolutely gorgeous. The next bed is our onions, and so these are starting to be done. Let's see here, and actually I'm going through here daily now and checking on the necks of the onions. When you want to harvest is when the neck goes soft and kind of folds over. So if you can put any pressure on it at all and it doesn't move, it's still growing. And then I am already curing, you'll see, because this bed was completely full. But I was reading up on really, really wet years. It may be better to actually break some of these necks for the onions, even if they're still a little small, and get them to start drying out, so I don't have a lot of lost crop during the curing process. Last year the curing process worked really well for us, so I'm hopeful, but last year was a very dry year, so it goes back and forth, right? These are some of my red onions, and I have a couple really large ones over here. You can see how big that is. Probably pull a couple of those and do some refrigerator pickled onions. Very easy to do. Highly recommend it. And then here's our Lisianthus bed, and we are starting to get some buds really close to opening. These first ones tend to be ones that you prune off, and because you want to actually get it when the number 2 and possibly number 3 are ready to open before you cut them. I've been having some issues with the Lizzies. They are not an easy flower to grow, or easy plant, one of the more difficult. But that's why I focused the fertilizer on them this morning. The next row, we've got the 2 front are Birdies tall 8-in-1s, and the back one is a 9-in-1. So the front ones, 8-in-1s, are roughly like 3.5 by 7 or something like that. I can't remember the dimensions at this point. Got kind of a Mod Podge in here. Marigold, status, parsley. I can't wait to make chimichurri. It's a delicious recipe. If you've never had it, look it up. It's kind of like a pesto with parsley and vinegar and lime and all sorts of goodies. So, olive oil. Peppers in here. The last of the feverfew is starting to be ready. More onions, and again, you can see in this bed I've been harvesting quite a bit. Kale, it's a little holy, but that does happen. You're not spraying for bugs. So most of these onions are right on the edge of being ready at this point. more onions in this bed and peppers. We've got the poblanos, the guajillos, serranos, jalapenos, Thai chilies, maybe, in this bed. I need to stake these really badly. Usually I would have staked these well before this stage. Some of these are pretty large, but definitely behind. This bed was, is this potatoes? I think it was potatoes. And so we already harvested the early potatoes and actually had some last night. This bed has like 500 or 600 carrots that I planted, pellet seeds. So I evenly spaced them through the entire bed. Carrots are a great crop to be planting right now, depending on when your last frost is. They actually like frost, so try to get them so that they'll be roughly about full size right when the frost is going to hit. For us, I think we're down to close to like 70 days to our average last frost, and carrots are roughly, these ones I think were a 76-day crop. There are a few that are 54, so just make sure you're looking at your days to maturity. And if it is 54, that's awesome. You can definitely plant some more later as well. So that's how I'm looking at kind of what I'm planting in the new space. On the back side of this bed was carrots, and we had already harvested this half of the bed. So I put some Lizzies here, some extra jalapenos that we had gotten. They were kind of sad already, so I just fertilized those. And then our like leftover little onions that I had started there. You can see the back side of this bed. This next bed is the bed a lot of people like to see. It is my bell pepper bed, my sweet pepper bed. And there are 36 bell peppers in this bed. And then onions surrounding it with marigolds and basil on the other end. These are 2 8-in-1s and then the 9-in-1 in the back for sizes. And one of the things about bell peppers is they really like to hold hands, which means that if I plant them at a right distance apart, they will hold each other up and I won't need to have stakes. And you can see they are pretty healthy plants at this point. I have a few peppers finally getting some size here. I had started these probably about 5 weeks later than I normally do, and it showed, comboed with the year we're having. But we now finally have quite a bit of peppers in there. You'll notice that I do keep this pretty pruned, so if I put the camera down in here, I need a weed, it looks like, but you can see the undergrowth is really open. And actually, this helps me in a couple different ways. It allows good airflow for the peppers. It allows me to water them better when I need to. It also allows these house wrens, they come in right under the peppers, they fly in underneath there, and they pick off a lot of bugs. So that also is very helpful. The onions are doing amazing on this bed, and I will be harvesting these very shortly. Some more peppers. And you can see some of the basil here at the end. This next bed was the spinach bed. So I've topped these other beds off, you can probably see, with some new compost. And with the beds, they do tend to settle down a little bit. And then when you're pulling plants back out, you end up losing some soil through that way, depending on how you're gardening. This one, I just topped it right over the top of the spinach plants I cut down. I am still planning on what I'm putting in the middle here, but I did put lettuce seed over in that section. I've got this whole middle section here that I have to figure out. I planted some of the extra pepperoncinis that we have, or shishitos, and some basil. I'm going to let flower, parsley. I had some extra celosia in the hoop house, so that got planted out here. And so this section here may become more carrots, I'm not sure yet, or maybe space where I end up moving some of the lettuce that I've planted and splitting that out if I need to. But this was pelleted seeds for the lettuce, and summer crisp and a few other hot lettuce. When you are looking at doing lettuce for the fall, you're probably going to want to wait until like mid-August, depending on the variety. So another item to check your days to maturity on, and your average first frost date. This next bed, I need to put the peppers on. I got more bamboo stakes for that, for staking them up, but they are really loaded for cayennes. So most of these are cayenne peppers. I put some really small ones in. Got some of the large flat leaf parsley. Again, onions around the edge. Some snapdragons that look actually really nice. That'll be a nice late summer or midsummer, I guess midsummer, to have some of those. Basil here on the side as well. Some of these peppers are other hots mixed in. I think there was a couple of jalapenos, a couple other things. So this will be a little bit more of a mixture. Typically, in the last few years, I have done 15 cayenne peppers in one bed, and we ended up with so much cayennes that our freezers are still full. So something that we need to plan better. So I tried to decrease a little bit this year. Just a quick note on the mums. I am doing, I think I did a video, probably posted it right before this video, before you see this one. But I did feed and fertilize all of the mums this morning, and the asters. This bed was a potato bed that we harvested, and I topped it off, and I have not planted it yet. We're going back and forth. This may become beets, and so we can have some beet greens, and potentially put some beets at the market. And it also may become some more lettuce space. Turns out I did really well in the early part of the summer for lettuce, but now I am running a little low, which you probably can tell. Our sweet potato bed, I should also note that this is a 6-in-1 Birdies bed, so much smaller. These last two tall individual beds are 8-in-1s. And so I have 15 sweet potato slips in this. And I do find it interesting. We haven't done it, but supposedly you can eat the sweet potato leaves, which I thought was interesting. So I might look up recipes for that. In this bed, I have planted more carrots. So I have some carrots coming up. I've got some status in here. This whole area is carrots. You can see I just harvested some lettuce. These are the last few lettuces I have growing right now, besides the stuff I've seeded. And this whole section is seeded with lettuce. Then I've got some of the small little celery that I just planted, and more carrots here. You can see some of the onions. And then over here, I have the watermelon radishes. With it being so hot, I'm not sure how they will visually do. But those seeds are from Michelle in the Meadow down in Florida. I think North Florida maybe. So thank you. Big shout out to her for sending over some nice seeds. But yeah, I'm excited to see how those actually do. It's a little late for radishes, but I believe that type was made for the heat. Radishes typically are a cool weather crop. And you'll notice I do have some basil in here. There are a few things like the herbs and onions that I will put in pretty much every bed. The tunnel, another one that everyone likes to see. So this is 2 of the Birdies 8-in-1 beds on each side, so 4 beds total that we combined. It's roughly just under 2 feet wide by roughly 17 feet long. There are 4 cattle panels that go down into the beds with T-posts, and they overlap. And when Jace was building this, we used zip ties and then converted it over to these metal wires. But the zip ties really helped hold the shape of the arch, which I've been really happy with. We really didn't want it to look kind of funky shaped, and so I'm really happy with how it's held up for the last couple years. I pulled all the peas. You'll probably have noticed that. So now there's a big gaps in here. There's a whole bunch of dill we need to actually start harvest and dry. And the watermelon and cucumbers and pumpkins are now starting to escape. I have tried to angle them back up, and they just want to be out of this bed. So I am at this point just letting, especially this watermelon, go to town and have fun. You'll notice I did fertilize, so I'll come back here later today and wash off the bed, but I don't want to wash it when the fertilizer is still soaking in. So pole beans, a long pie pumpkin. I think I did baby Pam pumpkin, pie pumpkins, the watermelons, probably sugar baby would be my, I think what one I planted this year. It's kind of the normal one I plant, a little smaller. I've got pole beans, multiple types as usual. So we use those for our dog treats. Cucumbers as well. Cucumbers have not done very well outside with all of this rain, so thankfully I have some in the hoop house growing vertically. I've got some pepper plants, basil. These are the apple blossom. They were not happy this year. Snapdragons. You can see more dill. We were getting ready to do a lot of pickling, and then we also have I want to dehydrate and dry, or actually we might freeze dry. I'm not sure which we decided yet. I've got some onions in here. These are the Florence specialty cooking onions, and I've harvested a lot of them already. They are kind of like a shallot shaped, elongated shape here. Let's see, status, snapdragons, onions, peppers, kind of everything mixed in. This area here, I didn't expect to get more shoots of snaps this early. Usually I would have them in the fall after I cut them in the early summer. And these are usually where I would try to plant some lettuce because it would be shaded partially. You can see this is probably one of the long pie, or this could be a butternut. I don't know if I put any butternut up here. Parsley's in here. The beets, I really need to harvest these. They're finally a decent size. So those will get harvested. And again, we'll try to put some lettuce in the shaded area here when I do that. The sweet peas, I got behind, as you can probably tell. Usually you want to keep pruning them as much as possible so they don't go to seed. But I didn't keep up with those. I ran out of time and rain and whatever, so it happens. So they are definitely going to seed at this point, and a little unhappy. I'm not surprised. The thing about sweet peas, I guess, is that they are true self-pollinator, and so whatever color you see is what color you'll get from the seeds. So interesting on that one. I don't think I need more seeds yet. The seeds will stay, I believe, for 5 years or so. But if you are growing them, that it could be something of interest for you. On this side of the tunnel, I have mostly zinnias. Kind of thought it would be a really gorgeous end and attract a bunch of the pollinators from all the wildflowers around our berm. And the zowies have been amazing this year. I've been picking a ton of those. You can see this whole edge was lined with onions. You can see there's a whole bunch of gaps now where I've pulled those, and more dill. Definitely need to harvest that. We've got status in here, and I'm trying to think of what else is here. I think basil as well. Let's see. Yeah, here's the basil on the end. And then I've got the green beans going up. There's a watermelon, a baby watermelon in the back there as well. So definitely need more cucumbers. I'll probably just seed more. Should have enough time, I think, on the tunnel. They'll grow really fast, germinate really fast at this point. So that's the Birdies beds. Over here, I've got a mix of cuts and wildflowers, weeds probably for a lot of you. These greens around the edge of the cliff are the ones that I use for the greenery for bouquets all the time. The glads I had thrown in here, I had been picking. Yarrow I've been picking, and Rudbeckia has been gorgeous. I really like this one with the dark in the center. I put the extra zinnias, snapdragons, marigolds, and cosmos up here. And then the dahlias are pretty fast growing, but there are some issues. You can see right there, I've got slugs. I definitely have some other potential bug issues here, so I will be watching those and checking those out. I also need to put Sluggo down, and I'll do a video about some of this pest control that we do. So hopefully you enjoyed the garden tour and what we've got going on at the moment. And for the fall planting, it's really about what you want to have for storage or what you want to eat fresh is the best things I can tell you. And making sure that you know the days to maturity, the DTM, for what you're seeding, and make sure you add the germination days on top of that, because that's usually from when the plant is up, in some cases. But also know that the germination should be a lot faster because your soil's a lot warmer. You can do pots of lettuce started inside to make sure you water them really good, and then transplant the little seedlings out. That works pretty well. That's what I typically do. I was just way behind, so I just planted them right in the bed. The other thing is for carrot seeds. I know a lot of people have a hard time with carrot germination. This is too dry right now. So when you're germinating carrots, you want to make sure that that bed stays wet. And so some people will even put cardboard or 2x4s over the rows of carrots that they're doing after they water for 5 or 6 days and then pull it off. There are other ways you can do it as well. I just tend to make sure that I'm watering a couple of times a day. And the other thing to pay attention to is when you're choosing what you want to plant is, you know, some things are frost tolerant and some things really like cool nights. So if your summers are not cooling down in the evenings, you may need to wait a little longer before you plant those things like some of the lettuces. You can also try shade cloth or like an Ag 15, the one of the lightest bug cloths you can get to help you. Thank you guys all for watching, and happy gardening, and let me know how your gardens are doing, and if you have anything you would like me to focus on in a coming video, happy to try to accommodate.